Nick Fuentes is a figure who creates a lot of interest on the internet, even though what he says is considered totally beyond the pale by a lot of mainstream society and so on. You had him onto your show and you had quite a cantankerous interview. Can you just tell us a little bit about what happened there?
It's funny because I didn't really consider the interview to be cantankerous. I think his reaction to the interview made the internet think that it was going to be cantankerous. He was very friendly when he was here at my house. We told him we were going to cut a controversial trailer. He laughed. Everything was fine. And then 10 days later, he completely flipped when we released it. And so I had to think about why he did that, why he was so dishonest, pretending that we set him up when we were laughing about the trailer that we were going to cut. And then he pretends, he's so fragile. And if he thought that that was a testy interview, he just would not make it in politics. I've had testy interviews. I've had people take clips of me out of context and had to really defend myself. That was me just trying to get to the root of who this person was and asking him, perhaps wrongly, people have said that you hate Jews. He says he doesn't hate Jews. Okay, fine. I'll accept that at face value. But then can you explain to me why you hate Dave Smith? If it's just an Israel thing, Dave Smith is Jewish, but he hates Israel. I don't think he provided an adequate answer for that. And so maybe he afterwards said he changed his mind about the interview 10 days later. I think that's a bit of a nonsense. Look, my estimation of Nick is that he is comfortable where he doesn't have to defend his ideas. You get what I mean?
Let's address that first point there. So she's claiming that this was not some kind of hit job, that she didn't set him up right there. But the reality is she did set him up. Nick said that he texted her because he had this hunch that, she's going to do this hit job on him. So he texted her saying, hey, just to check, this is going to be a friendly interview, right? Or this is not going to be a setup. She texted him back saying, I don't do setups. I watched the entire interview, and right from the get-go, you could tell that this was a very hostile interview, that this was not, a friendly interview as she's claiming right here. Now, she's trying to reframe it and say that, oh, he changed his mind after it. But anybody who's watched the interview can see that Candace was obviously very hostile. So for her to be claiming that this was not some kind of hit job is very disingenuous at best.
And that is why he's kind of jumped into this sort of victim complex where having a conversation with people and disagreeing with them, like I don't agree with his perspectives, makes him angry. I mean, the anger that he showed after, you would have thought that I stabbed him in the back. And that's just not the experience that we had here. And we would have had him back on the show. But I'm not going to put my team through that. You pretend everything's fine and then say you magically change your mind and then you put on. To me, it looked like it was just theater. He was acting at a certain point, shut up, woman. And I tried to think afterwards about what it is that offended him so much, because then he said that I was stuck up and, it was trying to mom him. I think he was expecting a response. So if you sit across from a black woman, you say, I'm a racist. You're doing that to troll a response. And I didn't give him the response that he was looking for. So I'm not interested in that. If you want to jump on the internet and say the N-word and you want to call, I hate black people, that might be very funny and interesting for people that are young boys. I know kids on video games, they have the chats and they say the N-word 1,000 times. It's just not interesting to me. It's not compelling to me. And so what he took as perhaps conceit was generally just intellectual boredom. If you genuinely have something to say about how white people are being attacked, I can get there, or having that, but saying I want my children to look like me. What do you think about that? It feels like you're trolling for an emotional response. And I'm just not that emotional. You have every right. If you don't want to date or marry a black person, that's on you. If you want to say the N-word on the internet, have fun. It just doesn't insult me.
Again, she's playing like the victim here. This incident that she's addressing here is pretty much right at the end of the interview. I think it was literally within the last 5 to 10 minutes here when Nick clearly got fed up and he was just like, listen, you don't have to talk to me. She was asking him questions about, oh, when are you going to get married? And he basically got fed up and said, I'm not going to take this. You don't have to ask me about this. I'm not going to take advice from a woman. So that was at the very end of the interview. But during the whole interview, and let's set up the backdrop of this, because this was after the Iran war, and this was after Nick has had one of his best shows where he had 70,000 people in the show. And this was during the 12-day Iran war. And that's when Candace hit him up and said, hey, let's do an interview. And then instead of addressing the overall climate that was going on at the time, she pretty much just decided to do a hit job on the guy. Not once did she ask about the Iran war. Not once did she ask about geopolitics. Not once did she ask any serious questions. She just basically brought up this vendetta that she's been harboring for several years, and it was a complete hit job. So for a person to basically get fed up that you, first of all, said that you weren't going to do a hit job, then did a hit job on the guy, and then for him to sit through a several-hour interview in which you're attacking him, and then at the end, he finally gets fed up and then says, you know, I'm not going to be taking these questions about whether I'm getting married from a woman who got married in her late 20s going on to 30. You know, that's a very legitimate point.
Did you know about Nick Fuentes? Did you find out about Nick Fuentes because of Kanye West? Because I know that Kanye West once tweeted about you, and that blew up in a big way. And then Nick Fuentes worked on Kanye West's presidential campaign, I think, at one point.
Yeah, I mean, he was kicked off of Twitter and canceled, and I became aware of Nick Fuentes because people were actually creating a conspiracy theory about me, saying that when I said that I didn't support what was happening in Israel, that I was working behind the scenes with Nick Fuentes and the Groypers, because I guess on Nick's show, he was sharing a lot of clips of me and saying that, like, she's taking a stance on something because we hold the same opinion about Bibi Netanyahu. That's without question. And so they wrongly attributed him to me. But then when Elon Musk allowed him back onto X, I saw clips of him. And when he's not being a raging, angry, I think he acts like a bit like a teenager. He does, when he gets just into foreign, when he's talking about foreign policy, he's quite interesting. And that was his interest. If you saw when he recounted his story, he was on model UN in high school. He was very interested in foreign affairs. And you can see that. But then I think that he feels like he has to respond to the internet, and he thinks it's really cool to, you know, say the N-word or call a woman a bitch. And genuinely, I'm not interested. It doesn't offend me.
Okay, if that's his strength and those are the things that he was there for the interview to discuss, then why didn't you ask him a single question about the freaking war between Israel and Iran? Why didn't you ask him any questions about that? Why did you just go on to attack the guy in that climate? This literally makes no sense. You're saying that that's his specialty. You brought him on for an interview in that climate and decided to attack him, not ask him one question about his specialty. If you were trying to get that kind of interview, you're the interviewer. You should be asking those kind of questions. What is he just supposed to just bring it up on his own when you're attacking him? It's like, this is so disingenuous of Candace.
I'm not interested. I don't grow from it. Look, I'm 36 years old. Maybe that's why I'm not like, haha, that's so cool. It's so funny. Yeah, he said the thing you're not allowed to say. It's like, okay, if he stuck to just foreign policy analysis and gave up that bit of theater where he pretends like he's always being victimized, and I thought that maybe he was ready for that, to make that transition from the 18-year-old that was rejected to kind of being like, look, I've said some stupid stuff, and I now kind of want to enter in seriously and talk about foreign policy. But I don't believe that's the case. I think he's comfortable where he is, which is like screaming and pretending that he's constantly being victimized by conversation.
Candace, we'll end it there, but thank you very much.
Wow, that was so fake. That was the worst response I've ever seen. She pretended to be the victim the whole time, when in reality she was not the victim. And honestly, Candace has lost a lot of credibility in this response, in how she handled this whole situation. And then she went on to run to Tucker's show for Tucker to basically rescue her and criticize Nick with her. And that ended up leading to Tucker getting cooked. Let me know if you guys want me to cover that. But it's your boy Scope. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I'll catch you guys on the next one.